I'll call this meeting to order on Monday, July 17th, 2017. I want to welcome everyone. Tonight we have Deacon Tim Gibson of the International Gospel Outreach Church at 1101 Windy Hill Road, who will come forward at this time and give our invocation and also lead us in the pledge of the flag. So would everyone please rise?
All right, there we go. My name is Tim Gibson from the International Gospel Outreach, right off of Atlanta Road in Windy Hill. And on behalf of my pastor, Robin Hancock, it's been an honor for me to come and do the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance today. So let's start out with a prayer, if we don't mind. Our Heavenly Father, we know that the character of the people is determined by the character of the King. So we uphold all the men and women of authority over Smyrna, that we proclaim a blessing over them, Father, that they will continue to guide, guard, and govern over the city, that the people of Smyrna would know that they are being led by someone other than themselves, Father. So, Father, we just pray over the city of Smyrna that it will continue to prosper and grow. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let us do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
And for those folks that are maybe new to town or want to attend the International Gospel Outreach Church, they've been in our community about 20 years now. Stop by, you better have your tapping shoes on because they do a lot of singing and a lot of hand clapping. It's a great church. Agenda changes, we do not have any. I don't have anything on the mayoral report. Item 4 is land issues, zonings, and annexation. A, 2017-251 is approval of the transmittal of the Smyrna 2040 Comprehensive Plan by Resolution 2017-13 to the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. Ms. Jones, will you please give us the background on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The comprehensive plan for Smyrna, Georgia is mandated by the Georgia Planning Act 634. This act requires that each jurisdiction in the state prepare and implement a comprehensive plan, which is reviewed by the Regional Development Commission. For the city of Smyrna, the Regional Development Commission is the Atlanta Regional Commission, ARC. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval of the transmittal by a vote of 5-0. Ken Sudrick is here to provide more background information on this, and we'll also have a brief presentation on the Smyrna 2040 plan.
Mr. Sudrick.
Thank you. This is Jim Somervell. You've seen him in other meetings and work sessions and gatherings that we have. Jim is from our consultant, Jacobs. They have helped walk us and guide us through this plan. I think what's important at this stage is to emphasize to the public that you are approving the transmittal of the document. And as Ms. Jones said, it is a requirement of the state. The reason that is they want 60 days in which to review the document to make sure that we have addressed the minimum standards for the plan. Now, Jim will go through what all of that is, but the actual adoption, you'll see us back up here again in October after we get those comments from the state through ARC on that. And with that, I'll introduce again Jim Somervell.
Thank you, Ken. Good evening. Again, my name is Jim Somervell. I'm with Jacobs. Tonight, what I want to do is kind of go over kind of the brief highlights of the plan up to date, give also you and the public a chance to comment before transmittal. But again, as Ken stated, this is a draft plan. We have plenty of time to review and edit before final adoption in October. Just the very basics. This is a 10-year update of the city's comprehensive plan, your current 2030 comprehensive plan. It is mandated by DCA in order for the city to remain eligible to receive certain state funding and permitting programs. The plan focuses on 4 major elements: land use, transportation, economic development, and housing. It is built upon the overall vision set by the strategic vision plan that you adopted in 2014, and it also incorporates several of the ongoing planning efforts that they're happening right now, including the Spring Road LCI, the South Cobb Drive study, as well as the Cobb County Transportation Plan. As you can see from the schedule, we launched this back in December. We are nearing the end of the overall project. The final stage of completion, indeed, is just the review. In many ways, this is the kickoff of that formal review period. We'll come back to you in October. Up to this point, the plan has been very much a community-driven process. We've had a steering committee, stakeholder interviews. We've had several workshops. We also had a booth at the Jonquil Festival. And it was stated earlier by Ms. Jones, the pre-transmittal hearing before the Planning and Zoning Board back on July 10th. Final adoption is set for October 2nd. The plan that's before you that we're sending on to ARC with your approval is 2 main documents. One is a main report, which is about 125 pages. It includes 3 main elements: needs and opportunities, which is prioritized over the last 5 years, or for the next 5 years. It looks at a vision statement and the vision for the community over the next 20 years, and then finally a community work program of how to achieve that vision. The second document is the technical addendum, which is about 250 pages. It includes all the background materials and stuff that supports the findings of the main document. Chapter 1, like I said, needs and opportunities, lists 20 key needs and opportunities that the plan addresses. None of these should be any real surprises to you. Many of them came out of the 2014 vision plan. It was reiterated and supported by what we heard from the public throughout the public involvement process. It includes such things as ensuring infill development is compatible with the city and surrounding neighborhoods. Talk about enhancing your transportation network, supporting and retaining businesses, as well as a lot of concern about cultivating the public arts and culture as we go forward. The vision statement is, again, adapted from your 2014 strategic vision plan, but we've sort of translated into the language of place. You'll see it stresses such items as sense of community, access to connectivity, welcoming neighborhoods, and that sort of thing. But we took that vision statement, and then we sort of translated that into actual maps, into the 2040 future land use map, as well as a policy map, which will help guide future decisions for the city. I'll talk a little bit more about the future of land use map in a little bit, but it basically truly gives you guidance on parcel by parcel level of how to rezone property. And also, of course, the most important implementation tool is the community work program, which includes general policies and task items about how to achieve that vision. The new future land use map that we're proposing, it has a few new categories compared to what you're used to in the 2030 plan. We added a new category of residential. We also added a new regional activity center to reflect the community's interest in more urban development around SunTrust Park. We also added a new industrial mixed-use category, which will help encourage conversion of underutilized industrial areas to more mixed use and residential uses. We also added the 100-year floodplain as a feature to the map, and of course, this is all being supported by the policy map, which includes such things as where you have potential annexation areas as well as potential areas for public investment. The future land use map is supported by the narrative of the plan in Chapter 2, where we have character area narratives. Each of those different colors on the map represents different character areas, and for that we have listed appropriate land uses, corresponding zoning, implementation strategies, and that sort of thing that would help guide you all in making decisions for the future. The community work program, finally, is again a 5-year short-term work program. It incorporates ongoing efforts, and we reflected strongly the recently adopted budget by the city for 2018, as well as the recommendations of the LCI studies and other plans that you all have been working on. Finally, the technical addendum, it's the larger of the 2 documents, but includes some basic things that the state will be looking for, including your record of accomplishments, so how you implemented your last 5-year work program, and you did indeed implement the vast majority of it. It also includes the baseline conditions report, which is an assessment or inventory of all the facts and figures that we accumulated over the course of this project. It also includes all the documentation of the community engagement, all the summaries, everything dealing with the workshops and everything. So that if anyone had any questions about who was involved or what we did, they can go look there. And we also have a definition section, so if anyone had any question about terms that are in the document, they can go look there as well. Finally, everything's been placed up on the project website. That's where you can find it at guidesmyrna.com. And we'll be taking, like I say, comments between now and October. We started an errata sheet, basically, where we'll list all the comments and how we propose to address it. So we'll come back forward with that in October, along with any comments we get from the Atlanta Regional Commission. But anything can be forwarded to me myself or to Rusty Martin on staff. With that, I'll conclude and ask if you have any questions.
Any question from any council member? Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment. I want to thank everybody that's been involved in the sense of the citizens, the staff, and the council members as we've gone through this process. Just a reminder to my fellow council members that, as was stated before, this is just a transmittal. We're going to have time between now and the actual time we submit the document to the state, that final submittal, to review the document. I would encourage everyone here to do that and, get with Ken in the sense of anything you see that needs to be changed or issues or questions you have, and we have plenty of time to do that. But at this time, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the transmittal, on 4A 2017-251, approval of the transmittal of the Smyrna 2040 Comprehensive Plan by Resolution 2017-13 to the Atlanta Regional Commission and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs.
Second.
A motion is second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the vote, please indicate. Vote now. That is approved 6-0. Just for the record, Councilmember Charles Welch Corky is out of town on business. Item 4B and C, B, C, D, all are related, so 2017-172 is a public hearing only. There will be a no vote for this hearing, and the zoning request Z17-009, rezoning from R20 to RAD, conditional for the development of 15 homes at 3.64 units per acre, approximately 4.1 acres, land lots 332 and 333, southwest corner of the east-west connector and Fontaine Road, Weekly Homes, LLC. Ms. Jones, the background, please.
Weekly Homes LLC is requesting the annexation and rezoning of the subject property from R20 to RAD conditional for the development of a 15-home subdivision at a density of 3.64 units per acre. The proposed subdivision will be assessed from Fontaine Road with a public road that encircles a community space in the center of the property. Community Development recommends approval of the requested rezoning from R20 to RAD conditional for the development of only 14 single-family homes with conditions, and as of today, Community Development received a 14-lot plat from Weekly Homes, which Ken Sudreth, our Community Development Director, will share with you very shortly. The zoning request was heard by the Planning and Zoning Board at the June 12, 2017 meeting and was recommended for approval by a vote of 5-0 with staff recommendations. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Sudreth.
Before we do that, this is a public hearing. I would first ask, is the applicant here? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that's in opposition or would like to give any public comment concerning this rezoning? Okay, let the record show there is none. Now, Mr. Sudreth. This is in Mr. Fennell's district, but Mr. Sudreth, if you want to give us a...
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. Ms. Jones has indicated it is coming to you from the Planning Commission with an approval. And as I walk you through this, if you heard how she started, this originally was for a 15-lot subdivision, and it had 6 variance requests. Staff and ultimately the Planning Commission only supported 4 of those 6. The 2 that we did not support, directly impacted what was previously known as Lot 13, which I will show you in a future slide. The bottom line is the consequence of all of that meant that we were really supporting 14 lots by not supporting all 6 waivers of that. So that the plan that you have and the adjustments that we've made in the recommendation if you approve this, will bind them to that 14 lot plan. And the variances that I will show you what they had submitted and what was requested and what we supported and ultimately what we have. Again, this is an annexation issue, so the future land use plan in the county was low density. If this is indeed annexed in and ultimately rezoned the way that we are discussing it, it would go on the map as a moderate density residential classification on our future development map. Now, the original proposed site plan, as I've already mentioned, showed 15 lots. There is a lot 13 in the upper right-hand corner next to the detention pond, but to make that lot work, they were requesting 2 variances. One had to do with lot width at the street, which would have been 40 feet down to 12 feet, as well as lot width reduction at the building setback line, which was 100 feet down to 12 feet on that. So here are the proposed minimum setbacks. None of that changes from what we've talked about in the past. All of those are compatible with previous requests that we have approved. There's the stormwater detention facility, open space, including in the center as you enter the property and go through around the circle. The 20-foot landscape buffer. And then here are the requested variances that I've outlined. And in this case, you can see it's really the second one and the 6th one there that staff was not supporting. Now, this is the 14-lot site plan that we received today, and that's currently proposed. Again, as a result of that, the needs for those variances of actually number 2 and number 6 are no longer needed, so we're dealing with 4 variances. These are the proposed home elevations. Again, subject property, this is an undeveloped wooded site. Adjacent properties in the area, again, this is at the corner of East-West Connector and Fontaine. The staff's recommendation is for approval as well as the Planning Commission, even though the site plan is slightly different that we're acting on, the consequence of their action resulted in 14 lots. So they were in support of it as well. We have the standard conditions that are listed above that dealt with the composition of the homes and buffers and protective covenants and open space that we talk about all the time. So those, we will bring those right out of the ordinance for that. But in terms of special conditions that also apply to this property, but specifically deal with what has been proposed, deal with the minimum setbacks, that you would have a front of 25 feet for all the lots except for lots 3, 4, and 15, which would have 25-foot sides with 10 feet between buildings and a 20-foot rear. Minimum driveway width, 22 feet, 5-foot sidewalk with a 2-foot grass buffer strip is required as we normally do. I've already illustrated the 20-foot undisturbed buffer that's there. No stormwater management shall be located in any portion of any of the lots, meaning that becomes a separate lot that's owned by the HOA. And then any portion of the detention facility that can be seen from the right-of-way has to be clad in a decorative breaker stone facade. All trees that are removed within the limits of disturbance and not located within a tree protection area have to be cleared during the grading. Again, I have referenced, and we put it in 23, that the site plan that we have today, which is July 17th for 14 lots, would be recommended for approval with that RAD zoning classification, as well as the applicant would be bound by the building elevations that they have submitted and we've shown in this presentation. I will leave you with the 14 lot plan and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, Ken, thank you very much. The applicant?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Ellen Smith. I'm an attorney with Holt, Ney, Zatkoff, and Wasserman. And just for the record, the address is 100 Galleria Parkway, Suite 1800, Atlanta, 30339. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening and for your consideration of this request. Ken and staff have well versed you on this application, both in terms of the annexation and the rezoning. We did come in initially for 15 lots. We understand that the staff does not support that or the variances according to have that 15 lots. We've presented the new site plan. Happy to answer any questions you may have all of the elevations, the old site plans, and everything else, as well as our justification for the 15th lot. But in an effort to save you a little bit of time, considering your lengthy agenda this evening, I'll reserve that for any questions. But I will note, should you decide to move forward with the conditions as proposed by staff, including the 14 lots versus 15, I think there needs to be one change. It's to condition number 16. That's the condition that sets out the front setback, side, and rear setbacks. And the only change is if we're going from 15 lots to 14, it specifically calls out the front setback applicable to lots 3, 4, and 15. And I think the 15 should be changed to 14. That is shown on the site plan that we presented, so I think it's consistent with the other conditions and what Ken has presented, but I just hate for that lot reference to carry over, and I think it's just a typo. I'm joined this evening by David Weekly Homes Land Acquisition Manager, Beth Kidd. We're happy to answer any questions and respectfully request your approval of this application. Thank you.
Before you leave, are there any questions of the applicant?
I should have said, too, we did reach out to the Oak Hill subdivision. Those neighbors actually came in support of the application at the Planning and Zoning Commission. We had no one oppose the application and are not aware of anyone opposing it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That will conclude the public hearing portion of this item. We will go to item C now, 2017-271. Approval of ordinance 2017-07 for annexation request. 100% of owners requesting annexation. All tracts or parcels of land lying and being in land lot 332 and 333, 17th District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, Georgia, for approximately 4.1 acre tract. This parcel 17033201330 is located at the east-west connector in Fontaine Road, Smyrna, Georgia. It will reside in Ward 7 and become effective August the 1st. Mr. Ron Fillon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank David Weekly Homes and their representatives to what is not a normal process, maybe what Smyrna does, but we appreciate that the staff and the planning and zoning folks who help with the outcome and the guidance here. And we appreciate your understanding of the challenges that we face. As Ellen mentioned, the Oak Hills Homeowners Association, which is the adjacent tract that it basically engulfs it to the west, has shown their support. I've spoken with those folks, and they're pleased that this development is happening consistent with their neighborhood. We have built a whole neighborhood across the street in the last couple of years with Ashton Woods, so it continues to round out our housing inventory on the northern side of my Ward 7. With all of those folks that I've spoken to and the publicity around this, we have had no opposition, and I'm happy to make a motion to 2017-271, move approval of the ordinance 2017-07 for annexation request, 100% of all owners requesting annexation, all tract or parcel of land lying and being in land lot 332 and 333 of the 17th District, 2nd Section, Cobb County, Georgia, for an approximately 4.1 acre tract. This parcel 17-033-20-1330 is located at the East-West Connector and Fontaine Road, Smyrna, Georgia. It will be welcomed and will reside in Ward 7, become effective August 1st, 2017.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to annex this property and become part of Ward 7 effective August the 1st, 2017. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. It's approved 6-0. Item D, 2017-272 is a final vote. Zoning request Z17-009, rezoning from R20 to RAD conditional for the development of 15 homes at 3.64 unit per acre, approximately 4.1 acres, land lot 332 and 333, the southwest corner of East-West Connector and Fontaine Road, Weekly Homes LLC. I'll turn this over to Councilman Fennell to
Thank
make
you,
those
Mr. Mayor.
corrections.
Appropriate to amend this motion to change the number 15 to 14 to be reflective of the agreement that was reached in the submission of the revised plan. So I shall do so as a part of my motion. I move to approve the zoning request Z17-009, rezoning from R20 to RAD conditional for the development of 14 homes at 3.64 units per acre, approximately 4.1 acres, land lots 332 and 333, southwest corner of East-West Connector and Fontaine Road, David Weekly Homes, LLC.
Second.
Motion is second. Just for clarification, does that decrease the units per acre?
It comports with the agreement reached and what the approval of the planning and zoning and staff recommendations were and agreed to tonight by David Weekly Homes in their presentation.
Okay.
So yes, it's a one-lot decrease per the original submission, so it's the revised submission that you have here.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. It's approved 6-0. Tell Jimmy Nay I said hello.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item E, under Land Use Zonings and Annexation, 2017-174, public hearing zoning request Z17-008, rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of 3 single-family homes at a density of 3.57 units per acre, 0.699 acres, land lot 335, 4149 North Cooper Lake Road, Craft Mart Development. The background, Ms. Jones.
Yes, thank you. Craft Mart Development LLC has requested a rezoning at 4149 North Cooper Lake Road from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of 3 homes. The applicant is proposing to incorporate 3 new homes as Phase 2 of the Park Place subdivision. The zoning request was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Board by a vote of 5-0 at their June 12, 2017 meeting. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the 3 single-family homes with conditions. Rusty Martin, our senior planner, is here to provide more additional background for you.
Before we do that, is the applicant here? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is anyone here that's in opposition to or that would like to make any public comment concerning this zoning request? Okay. Anyone else besides this young man? All right, if I'm gonna get them sworn in, so Mr. Cochran, if you'll swear them in.
I do.
If you have a seat, we'll call on you in just a second. This is actually in Mr. Corky Welch's district, who was out of town. I know Councilmember Stoner is going to take care of this issue. So at this time, I'm sure he's going to call on Rusty Martin to.
Thank you, Rusty.
All right. As Tammy stated, this is coming out of the Planning and Zoning Board with a recommendation of 5-0. If you all remember, back in 2014, the City Council approved the rezoning of the Park Place subdivision, which is reflected on here as a subdivision that's to the southeast. They approved that with 12 lots. Since that time, the site's been developed, the homes have been constructed, and I believe it's been turned over to the HOA. During the construction of the project, they only built 11 of the 12 homes. And as part of this development, they're proposing to build the 3 homes and include one of the lots that was previously approved as part of this. So the overall Park Place subdivision will now include 14 lots at a total density of 2.5 or 2.75 units per acre. As you can see, the property to the north is R15, and then the adjoining properties to the south and west are in a little bit to the east are zoned RAD conditional. The future land use map has this area as suburban residential. That will not change with this request. It's under 3 units per acre, so it'll remain suburban residential. Here's the proposed site plan. The homes will front on Spyglass Court, but they will be accessed off of a shared access drive off the rear of the property, which is on the north side. The proposed setbacks for the site are consistent with the Park Place subdivision. It's a 20-foot front, 5-foot side, a 10-foot street side along North Cooper Lake, and then a 20-foot rear. Here's the 20-foot access easement, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Here's the proposed amenity area. Right now, they're proposing a 10 by 10 covered pavilion. And then they're proposing a 10-foot landscape buffer along the eastern property line. With this request, there are several variances that are requested, total of 5 of them. These variance requests are in line with what was granted with the Park Place subdivision. Here are the proposed home elevations for the site. They are consistent with the homes in the Park Place subdivision. Subject property, and then pictures of the adjacent properties to give you context. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning of the property from R15 to RAD conditional for 3 single-family homes to be included into the Park Place subdivision. With that recommendation for approval, we're also requesting the following conditions that are carried over from the original zoning of the Park Place subdivision. Standard conditions from section 1201 will apply, and then we have applied some special conditions, starting with number 15. These are the setbacks that are called out for the subdivision. 16 changes the minimum lot size to 10,000 square feet. 17 requires a minimum floor area of 2,000. 18 was removed because it's no longer applicable to this property. 20 was removed because it's no longer applicable. And 21, we added some verbiage to make sure that the installation of water and sewer is in line with what the Public Works Director is requesting. 24 was removed. 25, with the addition of these homes, they'll be removing some trees that were planted along the north side of Spyglass. And these trees were recompense for the development of the Park Place subdivision. So with that being said, all we're asking is that when these trees are removed for these 3 homes, that they get replaced back on site somewhere else on an inch per inch basis. 26 is requiring that there be a minimum separation of 50 feet from the driveway apron for the home on Lot 1 to the intersection with North Cooper Lake Road. 28 is just tying the approval of the rezoning to the site plan submitted. 29 is tying the approval of the zoning to the elevations. 30 is tying it to additional stipulations agreed upon by the applicant. And those are 3 different letters that were submitted by the applicant. The first was on June 1st, and that laid out a bunch of conditions that they agreed to abide by. The June 9th letter addressed conditions that the Park Place HOA wanted to address. And then the July 10th letter addresses concerns for the adjoining property to the north that abuts the access easement to the site. And it has to deal with screening and plantings along that easement to provide an adequate buffer from the easement and the shared driveway. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is there are y'all requiring them to have HOA?
This
Just
development will be incorporated into the HOA for Park Place subdivision. So, yes, there's a requirement for the HOA, but there's already an established HOA that they will be part of.
Any questions for Rusty? Okay. As the applicant, you please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name's Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Lark, and Huff in Valley, in Marietta, and have appeared before you on a couple of occasions. I do represent Craftmark in connection with this application tonight, and I have with me tonight Mr. Brent Benson of Craftmark, so he and I can respond to any questions you have. But in addition to that, even though they're not an applicant or a property owner, they're a property owner in the adjacent subdivision, which is Park Place. So Mr. Chris Sizemore, who's the president, Mr. Jason Gaines, who's the vice president. I believe both are here tonight. There may be others as well. This is an application that was heard, unanimously recommended for approval by P&Z last month. We had a town hall meeting that was facilitated by Councilman Welch approximately 10 days later on June the 22nd, and we had a pretty good attendance there, including Mr. and Mrs. Moon. And my latest letter of July 10th memorializes the agreements that we reached with Mr. and Mrs. Moon. I'm not sure if they're here tonight, but if they're watching on TV, I'd like to say thank you. They're very, very good people to work with, and we enjoyed being able to craft a stipulation, a condition that allayed their concerns with respect to our point of ingress and egress off North Cooper Lake Road. By the way, Mr. Martin brought up the fact that this is accessed by an easement for ingress and egress purposes along the north side of the property. It's my understanding from Councilman Welch that he has talked with the city attorney, and the city attorney concurs, as our research has led us to understand that that is a public access in terms of ingress and egress. It's fully recorded and is utilizable not only by Mr. Benson and Craftmark, but also by the property owners to the rear and others that that are served by that. This is R15 property. We are asking for RAD conditional. Right now, Mr. Benson and Craftmark could build 2 houses on that, so we're asking for an additional house. The sort of the balancing effect is when Park Place was approved back in 2014, it was approved for 12 homes, but only 11 were built. So we're asking for 3, which brings it up a total of 14. And as Mr. Martin said, a density of 2.75, which is consistent with the future land use map's recommendation for approval. If you look at the data summary comparison in your zoning analysis, you'll see a 2.75. We're right at the mid-range between what Mr. Martin and Mr. Sudworth has set forth with other residential developments in this sub-area, between 2.5 and 2.96. So we're right in the sweet spot in terms of densities, in terms of what I think you're looking for as far as upscale development. We have spent, I won't say an inordinate amount of time, but a good amount of time with the Park Place residents, and they've been very complimentary with their letter to Planning and Zoning Board. Hopefully copies of those are in your package, complimenting us on the interaction with them and the ultimate agreements we've been able to reach. And I would like to publicly thank Mr. Sizemore and Mr. Gaines and Mr. Hal Higgins, a contiguous property in Park Place, and Mr. and Mrs. Moon for getting us to this position and instrumental in making certain that we address and resolve the concerns not only Park Place and the Moons have articulated, but those in the community and those of staff as well. There are 3 letters of stipulations and conditions. I apologize for the concurrent nature of those, but it made more sense than to try to reincorporate them into the original stipulation letter because of the way this thing has evolved in terms of our discussions. We will be developing this as single-family detached residences. They will not just be in substantial conformity to, they'll almost be identical to those houses in Park Place, of course, differing architectural style and composition only in terms of having some ingenuity and aesthetically pleasing features on there. But the HOA in Park Place has ultimate approval of our elevations and renderings. They've been handed out to you. Do we have a 5-minute time limit? This thing's beeping at me up here.
You're
Okay.
way over, you're getting close.
Yeah, I realize that. I will keep it short, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your input. We have agreed to the 10-foot undisturbed buffer, including 8-foot fence on the common property line between us and Mr. and Mrs. Hal Higgins, who Mr. Martin mentioned. They are the most potentially affected by this in terms of their positioning of their kitchen in their home actually overlooking the property. So they're satisfied with what we've agreed to from their perspective, and they're, of course, residents within Park Place subdivision. There is a plan in the original negotiations. We had a commitment to spend up to $20,000 on the construction of it's a pavilion. I started to say gazebo, but a very nice pavilion. But as it turns out, Park Place says, look, we may want to spend that money in other areas, and frankly, we don't have any opposition at all to those monies being utilized for whatever they think is appropriate. Ultimately, as a part of the stipulations, we've agreed that the HOA for which Craftmark is the declarant, Mr. Benson is the declarant, will be turned over to Mr. Sizemore and Mr. Gaines and the governing authority of Park Place, as I said, within 30 days of an official rezoning of this property. We've agreed to the special stipulations. We've agreed to the standard stipulations. We've got 3 letters with self-imposed stipulations. The gentleman who was here that registered in opposition was at our town hall meeting. We would like this to reflect that we worked hard on it, and we're proud of the product. We're proud of the impetus, the economic impetus that this gives to the balance of the North Cooper Road corridor. And I'd like to thank, and I haven't done that, but thank Mr. Welch for facilitating the town hall meeting and for visiting on site when we first met with Park Place, and for going out of his way, frankly, with all y'all have to do, and with him doing that on his own time. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, we do ask that you follow your planning and zoning board's recommendation, your staff's recommendation as presented to you this evening, and with you and Mr. Stoner, we can respond to any questions that you may have.
Any questions? All right.
Thank you.
We did have one individual that was sworn in. If you'll come forward this time, make any comments, like to tell us who you are and where you live at.
It's up there. Just asking.
Could someone bring up the proposed site plan, please?
If you'll tell us who you are and where you
Thank
live
you.
at.
My name is Mike Lady. I'm the HOA president at Cooper Lake Place on North Cooper Lake Drive, which is right across the street to the left. You'll see this little street coming out from Cooper Place and the placement of these two homes. Now, let me make a point right up front. I'm not in opposition. I just wanted to speak because I have a couple of concerns I think you should think about. That's it. I have no, like I told earlier, I was at the planning meeting on this, and I was also attended Corky Welch's City Hall. And at that point, I said I have no dog in the fight. But there are a couple issues. The first issue I'd like to bring up is that I can't point here, and I don't have my laser pointer, but if you'll notice the corner of that, back corner of that house, that first house, okay, that's about 20 feet from the road. I mean, so when we're pulling out, we look straight into that house off of Sophia Lane. That's Sophia Lane to the top up there. Put that thing up here where I can get a better shot at it. My only recommendation there is that maybe there's some foliage put in there, like, you know, some arborvitaes or something that blocks that view off, you know, from the street, because like I said, it's only like 20 feet when you look at that. And you can see how that corner sits right there at the city line, property line. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is that we have a major issue in this particular area with traffic. It's very difficult to get a good sight line down North Cooper Lake, which would be, I'll call that north, going back toward Concord Road. There is a flashing light there now. Doesn't work. It works at random, because I've checked it over and over and over. But its job there is basically to tell someone that there's someone turning left into spyglass, so that they don't run into the back of them.
And you say it doesn't work?
No, it's. I know what it's geared to do because I've gone over it with the city, but it doesn't work. Okay.
That's the first I've heard that, but.
The other issue is that there's a speed sign there too. It shows the intersections, the three intersections, 25 miles an hour. Good luck. If anybody's going down through at 25 miles an hour, they must be bird watching or something. You know, the only person going 25 miles an hour is the ones getting ready to turn in right there. Everybody else going straight on right down that stretch, and they're taking advantage of it the whole way. My proposal is this. What I'd like to do is see, as part of this development process that we're getting ready to do here, is that we put a flashing light in front of Sophia Lane that indicates the oncoming traffic from the left. No different than we have in two other locations up North Cooper Lake Road, where visibility is very difficult, so that the people pulling out there are not going to get T-boned. The last thing we want is someone to get T-boned, then we have to stand up here in front of you. And I have people, you know, I just had an HOA, semi-annual HOA meeting on Saturday, and I'm still getting those complaints. Yeah, you can see it, but they're right on top of you. And at the speed at which they're going, if you're out in that intersection, you've got problems. So I'm not opposed to what's going on here. I'm just laying out a couple of things that we'd like to see. One is maybe something there on that 20-foot section where you cut off some visibility of looking into the side of somebody's house. And the other one is to put a flashing light there that would benefit from a safety point of view the people in Cooper Lake Place. And I think Corky Welch is a side item. I think Corky Welch wasn't here tonight because he must have known I was coming. Because I've had discussions with Corky on this also, by the way, at the city meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Mr. Stoner Has agreed to take
Yes.
this, since Mr. Welch is
Yeah.
not, he's hiding from, he won't do his job, so. No, he's not hiding, he's had this business trip planned for several months, so. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that is the case. Councilman Welch could not be here due to business considerations, so I agreed to take on handling this rezoning issue for him. In discussions with him, obviously, I heard also a lot of the work that was involved through this process of addressing adjoining properties and landscaping and easements and everything else. So I will say, at least based on my conversation with the councilman, there was a good bit of time spent on kind of going through these issues. At this time, as to the issues that were brought up, obviously I would ask that you follow that up with your councilman, Corky Welch, specifically. If we have a light that's not working properly, our staff needs to take a look at that. And those issues concerning the danger of pulling out potentially out of your subdivision, definitely would recommend following up with our staff and your councilman to address those issues. But this time, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion for 4E 2017-174 for approval. Zoning request Z17-008, rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of 3 single-family homes at a density of 3.57 units per acre, 0.699 acres, land lot 335 at 4149 North Cooper Lake Road by Craftman Development, LLC.
Second.
Motion is second to approve this zoning request. And I would just like to ask our city engineer, who is sitting in the audience, before you go home tonight, or you can leave any time, would you go out there and check the light at North Cooper Lake Road and find out what's wrong with it? That's the first that I've heard of it. But if it's not working, it seems to me that we'd have some liability issues if somebody does get hit and that light's not working. So if you'll do that. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment just before we cast the vote. Mike, I know that the development you live in and the development that's being amended with these 3 additional homes, it was my council district at the time we built both of those. We had those discussions in the town hall meeting about potential traffic issues. I'm glad you're staying on top of it to keep us informed, and our city engineer will do whatever we can do to make sure it's the safest possible. Police department can get involved with the speeding issue, but that's a different issue for a different day. But thank you for being attuned to what's going on and staying with us.
Any other comments, questions? All right, we have a motion second. All those in favor of the motion, please vote. It's approved 6-0. Item F, under land issue zonings and annexation, public hearing zoning request, Z17-010, rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of 2 homes at a density of 5.99 units per acre, 0.334 acres, land lot 487, 2925 Man Street, J. Carpenter Homes. Ms. Jones, the background, please.
J. Carpenter Homes is requesting a rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the demolition of the existing home and the construction of 2 new single-family homes at a density of 5.99 units per acre. The zoning request was heard at the June 12, 2017 Planning and Zoning Board meeting and was recommended for approval by a vote of 5-0. Community Development recommends approval of the requested rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the construction of 2 new single-family residences with conditions. Rusty Martin is also going to provide background on this item as well.
Is the applicant here? No, you were just here. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that's in opposition to or would like to make any public comment concerning the rezoning request for this property? Let the record show there is none. This is Ms. Nullawich's district, and I'm sure she's going to turn it over to Rusty Martin for a brief presentation.
I am indeed.
All right. As Tammy stated, this is coming out of the Plan and Zoning Board with approval of 5-0. The subject property is located at 1081 Stevens Street, which is a vacant site, and 2925 Man Street, which has one single-family home on there. So we have two legal lots of record. They're approximately 3/10 of an acre. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing single-family home and accessory structure and build two new single-family homes on the property and reconfigure the site. The city's future land use map has a land use designation of future or medium density residential, which is up to 6 units per acre. The proposed density for this development is 5.99 units per acre, so there will be no land use change associated with this rezoning. And as you can see, to the north, west, and east, and to the south is all medium density residential. Here's the proposed site plan for the site. It has a front setback of 25 feet, street side setback along Man of 25 feet, interior side setback between the two proposed homes of 7.5 feet per lot, which will equate to 15 feet between the houses. An exterior side on the eastern side of 10 feet and a rear setback of 30. The home that fronts on the home furthest to the east, fronting on Stevens Street, will have a front entry driveway. The home to the west that is at the corner of Stevens and Man will have a rear entry side access off of Man Street. With this request, there'll be a 10-foot right-of-way dedication to get the local roads up to 50 feet width for the right-of-ways. And then here are the detention facilities where their stormwater will be addressed. Here are the proposed home elevations. This is what the subject site looks like. And then the surrounding properties. Community Development recommends approval of the rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for two single-family homes at a density of 5.9 units per acre with the following conditions. Standard conditions from Section 1201 and the following special conditions. Number 10, the minimum front setbacks laid out in the previous slide. Number 11 requires a minimum driveway length of 22 feet. Number 12 requires the 10-foot dedication along Man Street and Stevens Street. 13 requires all water and sewer taps to be bored. Number 14 requires a minimum separation of 50 feet from the driveway on Man Street to the intersection of Stevens Street. 15 ties approval of the rezoning to the site plan submitted. 16 ties the approval of zoning to the elevations. And 17 are the additional stipulations agreed upon by the applicant. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Question. So, did you hear any from any of the residents around there? I'm just curious about where the homes will be facing differently, and there's the property right behind on Man Street. I mean, that faces.
I personally talked to one person. He did not voice opposition to the request. He just wanted to know how the stormwater management for the site was going to be handled. I sent him the site plan that was proposed, provided him with the city engineer's contact information, and I have not heard anything back from the gentleman.
And Susan, I have not heard from any residents either.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any comments? Mr. Sams?
For the record, but before I get into a very brief presentation on this, I want to bring it to y'all's attention as mayor and city council. The agendas that we get, the staff analysis, they're hyperlinked. It's an incredibly sophisticated, at least to me, process. It's cutting edge, way above any other jurisdiction is doing right now. So I want to compliment your clerk and Mr. Sudworth and Mr. Martin for that. The ease with which we can access documents online is remarkable. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I do represent the applicant, J. Carpenter Homes. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, and Bally. My client, Mr. John Hicks of J. Carpenter Homes, called my staff today and said he had pneumonia, so we dissuaded him from coming today. But at least I wasn't going to sit by him. But the property owner, Mr. Brian Minnick, I think is here. He is indeed. So at the appropriate time, if either here, I can respond to any questions that we will. To respond immediately to your question, Mr. Mike Hurahan is an adjacent property owner, and he did, as Mr. Martin said, have some questions. So we dealt specifically with him, and he was copied on the stipulations and everything else. So, and he, although he didn't say he represented the entirety of the area, I got the feeling he was speaking on behalf of some other people as well. So we did respond to him. This did receive unanimous recommendation for approval from your planning commission. Mr. Martins did a good job of presenting this. The medium density allows up to 6 units per acre. This isn't a density grab at 5.99. It's just the way it turned out to replace one home and to put another home on the side. If you look at your analysis in your books, you'll see that the densities range from 3.31 to 6.67 in the area at 5.99, or call it 6. We're a little bit, say 3/4 of the way up, but we're within the policy articulated by the mayor and council as far as your future land use map. We submitted a letter of agreeable stipulations and conditions on June the 5th. We had no opposition at Planning and Zoning Board. Mr. Martin's done a good job of presenting it. You have other things on the agenda. So unless there's any questions, Mr. Mayor, we just simply ask that you follow your staff and your Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation for approval. I mean, I could literally talk all night about this, but I literally don't think you want to hear it. So.
You would literally be by yourself.
No, just quite certain of that.
Any questions to Mr. Sams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Anulowicz.
No, we all of us on the council know, actually we know Mr. Hurahan very well. He's worked with the council on several things, and I do believe that if he did have any more reservations and if his neighborhood had any more reservations, he would have been very forthcoming with them. So I have actually not heard from any other residents on this, and I think that the houses are definitely in keeping with a lot of the redevelopment that we have had in that area. So I have no further questions at this time. I don't know if anyone else in the council has any more questions.
Good to go.
Then at this time, I would like to go ahead and move to approve item 4F, which is the zoning request C17-010, rezoning from R15 to RAD conditional for the development of 2 homes at a density of 5.99 units per acre. It's a 0.334 acre tract, land lot 487, 2929 Man Street. The applicant is J. Carpenter Homes.
Second.
A second to approve this zoning request. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. That's approved 6-0. Thank you very much. Item number 4G on the land issue zonings and annexation is 2017-250. Public hearing approval of subdivision plat for 13 residential lots in the R20 zoning district, 7.01 acres, land lot 556, 3360, 3380 Pine Tree Drive. Paramount Realty Group LLC is the applicant. I'd ask for Ms. Jones to please give the background on that, please.
Paramount Realty Group LLC is requesting 13 lots for the development of single-family detached homes. The existing R20 zoning at 3360 and 3380 Pine Tree Drive will be retained. The applicant request a reduction in the lot width for 2 of the lots. The zoning request was heard by the Planning and Zoning Board at the July 10th, 2017 meeting and was recommended for approval by a vote of 5-0. Rusty Martin will be providing more information, and staff recommends approval of the requested subdivision and lot width reductions with conditions.
Is the applicant here? Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I?
Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize. Just at this point, I want to go ahead and I'm going to ask Councilman Fennell to handle this matter. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and vote due to the fact that my parents are adjoining property owners. And after talking with council, thought it was best that I not participate nor vote on this matter, just in case of any appearance of a conflict or anything like that. So I just want, at this point, I'm going to recuse myself and remove myself actually from up here, and I'm going to ask that Councilman Fennell carry on with this. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This is a public hearing. Is anyone here that's in opposition to or that would like to make any public comment concerning this issue? Okay, we've got one person. I'm going to ask that both the applicant and this individual please come forward and be sworn in at this time. And I just say this, I do this every time. If you think you want to speak and you don't want to, then it's best to get sworn in all at one time. So, Mr. Cochran. All right, if you folks will have a seat. This is in Mr. Stoner's district, although he's asked that Mr. Fennell take care of this for him. I'm sure that Mr. Martin will now give a presentation on this particular piece of property. Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir. As Ms. Sadler-Jones stated, this was approved by the Planning and Zoning Board by a vote of 5-0.
Just for the record, you're not in any relation to the property owners.
No, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, so it's a long way from the Martins that live on Pine Tree.
Yeah, them boys got them around, though. I'm just kidding. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you, Rusty. Yeah.
The subject property is 3360 and 3380 Pine Tree Drive. It's located on the west side of Pine Tree. As you can see, the zoning map reflects the property as R20. There is no rezoning associated with this request. They're recommending and requesting to remain in the R20 zoning district and build this subdivision in accordance with the R20 requirements. Here's a better look of the property and how it lays in relationship to the adjoining residential properties. Here's a survey of the site. 3360 is 3.7 acres. 3380 is 3.2 for just over a combined acreage of 7 acres. Here's the proposed 13-lot subdivision. Each lot has a minimum acreage or a minimum area of 20,000 square feet. We have 2 variances associated with this approval. The first being for lot 6, which is a lot width reduction from 100 feet down to 77 feet, and then lot 8 from 100 feet down to 65 feet. And those reductions are purely due to the arc of the cul-de-sac and the constraints that that radius creates around the cul-de-sac. As I stated, this all just sums up what we're addressing. With this request, Community Development recommends approval. With that approval, we stipulate that the site be developed in conformance with the subdivision plan submitted. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Rusty? Thank you, Rusty. Is the applicant here? If you'll please come forward and identify yourself and make any comments that you'd like to make.
My name is Ben Morris, and I represent Paramount Realty Group.
Pull it up a little closer closer to you. There you go.
Right. My name is Ben Morris, and I represent Paramount Realty Group. We are looking to utilize the property for the current R20 zoning for the development of 13 lots. And we do ask that you follow your staff planning's recommendation for approval. I'll take any questions.
You've done a lot of work in that area. I think y'all's company has, hasn't it, in redeveloping and.
We have some custom homes, some spec homes as well.
Yep, good deal. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
The young lady that was sworn, if you'll please step forward and identify yourself and tell us where you live at.
Hi there, I'm Laura Searcy, a proud resident of the city of Smyrna at 3375 Pretty Branch Drive. I'm one of the neighbors that's contiguous to the development. And it just had a brief comment. I just want to say on the record that I appreciate the effort of Paramount and its principals in listening to and responding to the questions and concerns of the contiguous property owners. I moved onto that house that we built on Pretty Branch Drive, and our selection of that lot was in Maine because of the large amount of forested area and the wildlife that lives in it, and the distance between our property line and the nearest house on Pine Tree. I appreciate the stated attempt of the developers to maintain as much of the tree cover as possible and to keep a tree buffer between the construction and the property owners. And at the planning and zoning meeting, we had absolutely no objections to the variances. They actually help to protect the interests of those of us that are surrounding it. My only concern that I wanted to address is that in some of Paramount's prior projects in the area, they have run into some stop work orders related to some ordinance issues, including tree removal. And once trees are down, they can't be replaced. So I would just ask that the principals be very careful in their supervision of their construction crews, and that the city be proactive in their oversight to ensure that that the development of the project will go without unfortunate occurrences. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will just say this, I hate to see this being redevelopment. I remember when the Martin brothers all built their homes there, and the Martins have been a solid part of this community for 60, 70 years, and I see Mr. and Miss Martin out there now. We hate to see y'all leave, and we thank y'all for giving everything back to our community that y'all have. The Martins have been, Howard Martin lived in the first house, Rex Charlene lived in the second house. Just great folks that lived in Smyrna for all these years. So I didn't know that y'all were leaving until, actually till Howard's son told me about it. So anyway, Mr. Fennell.
Well, they figured you weren't going to leave, so they had to. We appreciate the contribution of the Martin family, too. Everybody loved Howard's, and I don't know if we can keep Bobby out of trouble without this guy. So it's my privilege on behalf of the residents of Ward 6 to present 2017. All right, make sure I got the right one. -250. Approval of subdivision plat for 13 residential lots in R20 zoning district, 7.01 acres, land lot 556 at 3360 and 3380 Pine Tree Drive, Paramount Realty Group, LLC.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. That's approved 5-0. Mr. Stone recuses himself from this, so that's approved 5-0. Thank you very much. Mr. Stoner can, wherever he's at. He can come back in. Item H, 2017-215, public hearing, zoning request, Z17-011, zoning amendment to modify the currently approved site plan and building elevations, 3.3 acres land lot, 490 northwest corner of the intersection of Atlanta Road and Belmont Boulevard. David Weekly Homes. Ms. Jones, the background, please.
The applicant, David Weekly Homes, has contracted with Halpern Enterprises Incorporated to purchase 3.3 acres of land known as Pod B of the Belmont Redevelopment Project. David Weekly Homes intends to develop the property into a community of 59 single-family detached homes at a density of 17.97 units per acre. The proposed zoning amendment will result in the redesign of Pod B at the Belmont Redevelopment Project. The 11,000 square foot of commercial retail space along Atlanta Road is proposed to remain and is not a part of this application. The zoning request was heard by the Planning and Zoning Board at the July 10th, 2017 meeting and was approved by a vote of 3-2 with 2 members absent. Community Development recommends that this request be approved with conditions, and Mr. Sudrith is available to provide additional information.
Is the applicant here? Okay. This is a public hearing. Is anyone here that is in opposition to or that like to make any public comment concerning this zoning request, zoning amendment? Let the record show there is none. This is in Ms. Anulowich's district, and I'm sure Mr. Ken Sudrith or Mr. Rusty Martin will give us a review of that.
Yes, I'm actually somewhat surprised that there's no one here to speak, but I will turn this over to Mr. Sudrith.
Thank you. As already stated, this is coming both from staff and from Planning Commission with a recommendation for approval with conditions. This is the basically last parcel of land within the greater Belmont mixed-use development. The front part of this development has always been intended for retail. That does not change, and that part is not included with this request. It basically is the rear 2/3 of the property that we are discussing. What is being proposed is to modify the request to allow 59 detached single-family homes. Because it's always been a mixed use, it would remain mixed use. There's no change in our land use plan. This is the Belmont master plan, and if you can see at the upper right corner is Windy Hill intersection with Atlanta Road. That is the commercial segment that has been built, and the office is shown in sort of an orangey color on the screen at Windy Hill Road. The next pod as you come south on Atlanta Road is classified as Pod B, and that's the pod that we are talking about tonight. The portion in the rear of that pod was originally proposed back in 2009 to have a active senior living facility there on that. Again, here is the outline of where Pod A is. We've talked about the commercial and the medical office that's under construction right now. Pod B, as I just stated, was senior housing, 164 independent units there, and then up on the street primarily was 15,000 square feet or so of retail. This request is coming under the name of David Weekly, but it is owned by the Pod B section is owned by Halpern Enterprises. They also owned C&D, and they had sold that pod to David Weekley Homes, which is currently under construction, probably about halfway completed right now. But they were approved for 156 single-family detached homes. Obviously, we know where the Smyrna Elementary School is. That was classified as Pod E. And then into Pod F is where the apartments that have been constructed and are leased right now and completed. These were the elevations that came with that original approval for Pod B. The top one showing the Atlanta Road elevation, the bottom one showing the elevation from the side, which would be that north residential access road. You can see that on the north residential access side, there's the entrance to the parking garage, and that this then wrapped around three sides of that building. This is the proposed site plan. Their access would be off of Belmont Boulevard. They are proposing 59 units. Again, here's the retail space. They are currently proposing 12,000 square feet of retail space. The original approval, as I said, had close to 15,000. There was about 5,000 or so planned in the bottom of that senior living, and then 10,000 out front. We're basically shifting some of that retail, but it remains unchanged to occur out front. These are the setbacks that we dealt with in the other approval for Pod C and D. They will continue, just like they have across the street, meaning Belmont Boulevard, to have a 4-foot perimeter fence with brick columns. It is a gated community, just like across the street. These are private streets with private facilities, but there will be a gated emergency access off of the road that's between this pod and the retail that's currently in. That's for emergency purposes. This pod's a little bit different than across the street. Just to remind people, it has two access points, one Belmont Boulevard, but also one off of Fleming. So that's why the gated emergency access had to be placed here. This is not for the residents to come and go on a daily basis. It is indeed a gate there that the fire department will have access to. Proposing 14 guest parking spaces. We've delineated them here. They will have a little bit of open space in this, but this, since it's being developed with the same developer, will be combined in the same HOA, and they will have access to the amenity areas which exceeded our minimum requirements previously. So that's why there's not much on this side. They will just be part of the other HOA. Staff had a recommendation in there. This is the area that we were talking about, that there would be no fencing in between these homes. That has been modified with the assistance of the fire department, and I will explain that as we go further, but I wanted you to know exactly where that area was occurring. The modification is we would allow, and this is just a typical cross-section for that area, we would allow screening walls to occur in between those homes, but only on the sides, that you could not connect those screens to enclose that backyard. The reason for that is fire access as well as other maintenance and utility reasons. So the fire department was fine with the screens, but not totally enclosing the backyard. And the applicant understands that and has agreed has agreed to that. These are the proposed home elevations. I'll let the applicant describe the differences between the three sort of sections that they had over there and only two sections here, what the differences are, but they will be very similar in appearance. This is the proposed streetscape along Belmont Boulevard. And then obviously the subject property, which we know is vacant. Staff's recommendation is for approval. The rezoning is subject to the stipulations that were submitted to us on January 20th by Kevin Moore. The approval shall also be in substantial conformity with the Belmont zoning plan, as well as substantial conformity to those road cross sections that were submitted to us as well. Pod C and D shall be in substantial compliance. What we are doing here is we are rolling everything over previously. And so I'll quickly go through the changes, which are in red. If you jump to 6, the minimum floor area originally was C and D. Obviously now we have Pod B, so we've included that. Then we've picked up the substantial compliance conformity for the site plan that we have entitled David Weekly Homes, dated June 29th, as well as compliance with the building elevations. The developer shall be responsible for any traffic improvements deemed necessary by the city engineer. The same goes true for any water and sewer improvements deemed necessary by the Public Works Director. We talked about the fire access improvements, and again, the fire marshal and fire department are involved with that. There is a relocation of a water main that currently exists on the northern access road being the road between the commercial and this vacant tract of land now. It has to be relocated so that it will be 4 feet behind the curve to make sure that there's no improvements within 10 feet of it. The applicants are fully aware of that and have made adjustments accordingly. Again, there's a requirement for parallel parking on that northern access road that was, again, part of the original plan. It just has not been put in, so it needs to be established now. We talked about the gated entrances. We talked about the rear yards, which is item 16. I will say again on that the screening wall shall be limited to a maximum height of 6 feet and shall not extend further than 8 feet from the home. The screening wall shall not be connected in any way to enclose the backyards. With that, I'll leave you with the proposed site plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Ms. Sudra?
Actually, I do. Ken, just real quickly, looking at the site plan, and I'm trying to read it, real concerned about, I see the gate that allows pedestrian access out of the main gate where we have a separate gate for walking. I'm looking at the back, and I'm trying to look at this plan, and maybe the applicant can answer some of these questions, but am I looking at this? Is there individual gates on these lots accessing the sidewalk there facing the retail and everything?
I believe the answer is yes.
Hard to tell. I'm trying to look
I
at
believe
this.
the answer to that
Yeah.
is yes, but
Okay.
I think the applicant can
Yeah,
just
that's what I'm
verify
saying.
that.
Just okay. We'll discuss that.
Any other questions, Ms. Sudra? Thank you, Ken. If the applicant will, this completes a trifecta tonight for the council. We've had the highest priced attorneys in the county here tonight with Jim Nay, Garvey Sams, and Kevin Moore. It don't get any better than that.
Well, they're certainly more expensive than me, so happy to be here, though.
Glad to see you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. For the record, I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant, David Weekly Homes, as well as the property owner, Halpern Enterprises, in this proposed zoning amendment and site plan amendment for Pod B at Belmont. And as you can see from the introduction and context that Mr. Suds was provided, this goes back to 2009 and goes back before that in terms of the development plans and the overall redevelopment of Belmont Hills Shopping Center that involved quite an effort on behalf of the city at the time to have the vision to approve it, and it involved quite the effort on behalf of Halpern Enterprises to not only have the vision, but to have the resources and the ability to stick with it as this was undertaken during the teeth of the recession. And they stuck with it, and ultimately we've been able to execute, and the city's been able to see the results of that in this overall redevelopment of Belmont Hills. It's hard to imagine how it used to look, but it looks totally different now. The Pod B represents really the last pod for Belmont. And I kind of want to go back just to kind of give a little bit more context. There we go. And go to the Belmont Master Plan. Just to give you some context as to how this unfolded, since it has been so long. But, oh, ask the projector. Yeah, if you could you please put the Belmont Master Plan? There we go. Thank you. Wasn't sure I was talking to. Thank you, Ken. And if you see on this Belmont Master Plan, that's the current approved master plan. And what you, starting from the south and going north, starting with the south at Fleming and going along Atlanta Road all the way to reach Windy Hill, what I'd like to do is point out the changes that have occurred over time, because this plan had to respond, and this development, mixed-use development, had to respond to the market and the economic conditions that unfolded during this pretty drastic time period that we endured. First is the far left-hand side is a Smyrna Elementary School. That wasn't part of the original plan. We're glad it's there. That was a huge part of being able to get this done, was to do that with the Cobb County Board of Education and have that great school there. On the lower side, at the intersection of Fleming and Atlanta Road, pods C and D, that was not David Weekly's development originally. That was a change. That was actually where you had apartments. You had multifamily for Wood Partners that was going to be developed on pods C and D that had structured parking a part of it. Ultimately, when this came and unfolded, Wood Partners had to say, we can't do the structured parking there. That's not, that's economically, the construction costs get too high and it can't be done. So what we did was we shifted it. Now it's at the top left at Windy Hill is the multifamily component. The medical office at the top next to that multifamily component likewise was a change and a great one. I've heard as many comments about the medical office building there, positive comments that, wow, that's great to have that there and a part of this that wasn't part of the original plan. But what has stood by is the retail component to make that signature at the intersection and to bring that around. And with what we're proposing today, that retail component continues to stay and will continue to go across the front and complete that visual in that retail space. What we're proposing is simply that building you see in the middle. That building was proposed for 164 age-restricted senior independent apartments, but built with a structured parking deck. And it's that structured parking deck and the construction costs for that on a small site, 3.1 acres. You can build that on 3.1 acres, but what you can't do is afford to build that and run that and operate that and have that done. Is there demand? Sure, there's demand for senior housing. You've seen the statistics, it's in your plans, it's in your policies. We've all talked about it in numerous meetings that you've been in and that type of thing. But the problem we've encountered here, and Halpern's encountered here, is that it would be far more profitable and valuable for them to actually have executed or could have executed with a developer that could have done that to bring that component. But the construction costs with that structured parking turn that type of project upside down from an economic model standpoint. And once you do that on that small of a site for 3.1 acres, which is the residential component of Pod B, a senior or age-restricted type directed development for that is too small. A footprint for a senior home is a larger footprint because that's got to be on the main floor. So it's a larger footprint, and that's not big enough site to accommodate it. It's big enough to accommodate if you can do structured parking, but it's not big enough if you need to do surface parking, which you'd have to do here to be able to make it have any economic viability. So the comparison, we've discussed this at length with staff and with others as we've moved through this process. The comparison really is not, on the one hand, we have a age-restricted senior apartment community versus what David Weekley Homes is proposing. That's not the comparison because we don't have this. We wished we did. That was part of the plan, but that, despite all the efforts, the economies of that scale do not work and could not work and have not worked. But what we do have is the ability for David Weekley Homes to come in and complete Belmont. They're already there. The look that they have there, they're just going to simply take this like it would have initially. It'll look like it was planned all along because it'll be the same style of home, same exact homes, same style of arrangement of the homes in the site plan, same setbacks, same arrangement, same look on the streetscapes. In other words, when you come in on Belmont Boulevard or when you're crossing Atlanta Road or when you're inside Belmont's mixed-use development, the fencing, everything matches. It's consistent. This is just another phase. In fact, it'll be part of that homeowners association. They'll be part of it. They're expanding the amenities if this is approved and can go forward so it can accommodate it. All of that, it will look like it was intended all along because it will have that same look and feel. It's what should happen if the other cannot happen. And that's what David Weekley Homes has worked very hard at doing in this instance. They've been successful with with the current development they've built there. This will enable Belmont to be completed and to move forward. With that, there's certainly technical questions that may be asked, and we have those people here. We have representatives from Halpern. We have also Beth Kidd, representative from David Weekley Home that's here. And I just want to answer the question from Councilman Stoner. And yes, there's individual gates that go out to the right-of-way, to the sidewalk, and that connect that.
And if you don't mind me on that issue, so looking at this, so is that if the question I have is, so if I'm going to walk past my neighbors to go out the gate, you know, it's because it doesn't look like on this plan there's a gate at every home. It looks like, just looking at trying to look at this.
Is it every other? Every other. Right.
Okay.
Every other, yeah.
It's a gate at every other home so that it's accessible by the homes that
Yeah,
are
so
there.
I'm going to walk past my neighbor's house on the back to go to their gate to get out. The thing is, you have a gate on the front, and the reason I'm just raising this is I was just surprised not to see a gate on the back side near the emergency, that you seem to have the room potentially there near the guest parking, and I'm just raising that issue to make it, if you're living somewhere here and you want to get out, instead of me walking past my neighbor's back door to get to a gate to leave, that was just a question about if that was an option or something y'all looked at.
It has been there. I'm just looking, this also, you can walk, and let me start by saying the arrangement of these, if you go out there now.
I understand.
And that is, rears look like fronts and fronts look like
Right,
rears.
I understand. And that's
the way
that's
it's
what
designed.
that is, right.
And so, in terms of walking out to that sidewalk, you would walk out, in this instance, that particular side door, and you would just walk a very short distance to that gate. So you're really not in each other's business.
Yeah, it looks like the gates are situated right along the edge of the property line, so you're not having to walk across your neighbor's yard. Your neighbor would be,
Right.
yeah.
But if I'm a central house, I'm going to need to walk around to get out if I want to go over toward the retail is what I'm asking. In other words, I got to walk out the front, or I got to walk. You see what I'm?
You can
Oh,
also.
yeah.
That's the only thing I'm asking, and I'm not trying to create any issues.
You can also walk out the street where that emergency gate is.
Yeah, I
It
would
won't
say,
be
can you get out?
closed. Oh,
Yes,
yes.
it's going to be closed, but
But you can just walk right through
Yeah.
it, yes.
But if you didn't have the gates, anybody could just come walking through your,
well, I assume electronic control gate is what you probably have on the front, or some type of control gate.
That's correct.
You got to cross the street. I was just wondering if there was, beyond those other gates, if there was something else. But it was just a question in the sense of trying to make sure, as a pedestrian, you can access
Free access, yes.
your client's retail.
Yes, which is
what they
them to
want,
do.
I assume.
That's
Right.
exactly what they
Anyway.
want them to do, yes.
I do have a question about, because I'm not sure if it's really shown on the site plan. What kind of buffer is there? I'm looking at homes in particular, 35, 36 through 40, and home number 1. What kind of buffer is there between the retail parking lot and these backyards, or front yards, as it were?
That's the area to the rear of the parking lot of the, I'm just calling
Of
it
the
out.
retail.
So of the rear of the parking lot of the retail, to those will have both fencing and landscape screening.
Okay.
And the original plan, Kevin showed for 164,
164 senior apartments, yes.
and we're going down to 59 single-family, owner-occupied homes.
Yeah, that's right.
That is correct.
Did I understand you correctly? Because I'm really disappointed that this has happened, because I really look forward to having the senior housing component. And you more or less implied that from the very beginning, they knew that that senior housing was never going to work because of the lot size and everything that they had to work with. Is that correct?
No, they had every intention and happened very much wanted it to, because it would be far more profitable and valuable if it did. It's simply at the economic and market conditions that we face today now dictate that doing a structured parking standalone development for that, the construction costs just far exceed that, so the economic model gets turned upside down. So there's not a feasible option for that. There's not somebody that was ready to come forward and will be ready to come forward where that type of project can be financed or built or executed by anyone in this particular situation. That's what's happened over the time. Prior to that type of structured parking, it was involved just like it was for Wood Partners when they were on Pod C and D. That's why they couldn't do it either. You see structured parking when it can be shared structured parking like we have at Jonquil. That's a shared structured parking with the retail and their residential component there. And so that can work from a number standpoint. So that's what's happened. They would have loved for it to have happened.
Well, yeah, I think at Jonquil, the structured parking is only for the residential.
There's some bottom to it, if I recall right, that's able to be used. That's off of memory. If I misspoke, I misspoke, but that's.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the highest price property, I think anywhere, is apartment property.
It is.
And we're going from apartment homes to single-family homes.
Yes.
I just find it very sad here in Smyrna that if you're a senior, you have apartments built behind behind the H.H. Gregg store, which has just gone out of business, up an alley where you have to walk to the grocery store, or you can be on South Cobb Drive or something like that. But this would have been an ideal development to have had something like that.
It'd be a great place for one if you had the room for it, so you could do surface parking.
Well, and to clarify, seniors aren't restricted to only living behind the H.H. Gregg. But one thing that I've heard anecdotally is that part of the need for people who want to age in place, they want to downsize, that part of that need is being met by some of the multifamily developments that have been put in place, particularly the ones with elevators. And this may be a question for David Weekly, but are there any elevator options within these floor plans?
I believe so. That's no, right? Yeah. Not in these plans, no.
Any other questions of Mr. Moore?
I had one. The multifamily at the rear of the project is 274 units, and it anecdotally, I've heard that there may, from the standpoint of the population in there, we've had 27 students at Smyrna Elementary out of 274 units. Does that comport with what you've been made aware of? Approximate?
That sounds consistent with how they've described it. They don't usually give me pure demographics. They don't like for me to talk demographics.
So a lot of
like
seniors
that, yes.
may have been snapping up those units back there, because 1 in 10 units has one student in that school.
Right.
Just an observation that I picked up.
That's consistent with how they've described for me how that has been leased out.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Ms. Anulowicz.
Thank you. Yeah, this was definitely not an easy one for me. I'm disappointed that the senior component is no longer a part of the development. At the same time, I understand the market restrictions that are in place now. This is different than when this was originally planned out, and 2008, 2009, and I understand that and I appreciate that. Obviously, the weekly homes that have already been built in the pod that was originally supposed to be multifamily, they have been a success. Those units are selling, and I worry a little bit about long-term maintenance in terms of painting, but I also understand that there's a painting contractor or two that they now know how to do this, and they will probably be doing very well when it's time to start repainting those homes in 10, 12 years down the road. Again, I'm not in love with the idea of having more of these. At the same time, I don't see any reason not to move forward with approving this based upon what's been presented to us tonight and what was presented before Planning and Zoning. So I am going to go ahead and move to approve. Let me just get into, let's look at the documents. I'm going to go ahead and move to approve item 4H, which is the zoning request Z17-011 zoning amendment to modify the currently approved site plan and building elevations. It's a 3.3 acre tract, land lot 490, the northwest corner of the intersection of Atlanta Road and Belmont Boulevard, and the applicant is David Weekly Homes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this zoning request, this zoning amendment. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. That's approved 4-2 with Ms. Bluestein and Ms. Wilkerson voting in negative. So that's approved. Thank y'all very much. We look forward to more David Weekly Homes in Smyrna. Thank y'all very much. Item 5 is privilege licenses. We don't have anything under that. 6 is formal business. A, ordinance 2017-0. Approval of an amendment to the City of Smyrna Code of Ordinances, Chapter 98, Article 1 in the general, providing the repeal of Section 98-2A, I, penalties and procedures, and replacing it with Section 98-2, parking A through E. Ms. Jones, the background, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This amended section of the Code of Ordinances will address how vehicles are to be parked, citizens' request for a no parking zone, removal of no parking zones, and signs and exceptions. And city staff recommends approval of the amendments.
Mr. Derek Norton, who chairs the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is cleanup to our Code of Ordinances. Makes our parking ordinance more clear, clearly defines the way in which citizens can request a no parking zone, and clearly designates the way council designates a no parking zone. If there's no other discussion, I'll move to approve.
I have a question.
Okay.
And it's maybe more for Scott Cochran. I was reading through it, and I apologize, I didn't notice this or think of it before, but I was wondering how the cars will be parked in a cul-de-sac. I was reading how that was described, and I know there are some areas where cul-de-sacs in Ward 5 where people actually park like lined up with their driveway but sticking out into the cul-de-sac, and I just wanted to see what your thoughts are if this addresses those situations as well. Thanks.
Yeah, if you're asking me, I think that it does, because one of the things this parking ordinance will do is it requires cars to be a certain distance from the curb, and that it doesn't distinguish between cul-de-sacs and other roads. So it will require cars to be within certain parts, within certain distance of the curb, and if they're not there, that'd be a violation.
So
and that's state law also.
So you're saying that like the side of the car, like the right side of the car would have to be up against the curb versus?
Yeah, I believe it's 12 inches. Yeah, and this is state law as well as our ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Second.
And motion second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote. That's approved 6-0. Item 7 is commercial building permits. We have none. Item 8 is consent agenda. Ms. Jones, will you please read the consent agenda for council's approval?
Yes. The consent agenda reads as follows. Item A, approval of the mayor and council meeting minutes for July 5th, 2017. Item B, approval of the June 29th, 2017 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. And item C, appointment of Sharon Jones, Human Resources Manager, as the Civil Service Board Clerk.
A motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion.
Have a motion, second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? This was the easiest thing on the agenda. Consent agenda. There we go, 6-0. That proves 6-0. Item 9 is committee reports. We'll start tonight with Mr. Derek Norton.
And no report this evening, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Bluestein. Ms. Nulowich.
I have no report tonight.
Ms. Wilkinson.
Yes. I have something. Oh, I was going to pull it up. Sorry. Okay. Mary Moore had just asked me to announce this reminder about the library. The summer reading finale event is this Friday, July 21st at 11 a.m. in the Community Center Banquet Hall. The Magic Man Bill Packard will perform. And please remember to bring your reading logs so that you can pick up your final prizes. And with that, I yield.
Mr. Doug Stoner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I have is an announcement to the residents in Ward 6 concerning the Atlanta Road proposed development by John Whelan Homes. There between the Reed House and Charter Bank. I'm going to be having a town hall public meeting on August 2nd at Bronner Hall at 7 p.m. And I would encourage folks, obviously, who have an interest, any questions, to attend that meeting. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Ron Fennell.
I have three things I want to point out. First of all, the Wendy's at South Cobb Drive is being rebuilt. Many of you have driven by there, have noticed that. This is a long time coming. You recall we lost the couple in a tragedy at Lake Oconee that owned that property. It's been transferred. It's expected to be open by Labor Day. So we're looking forward to a new food offering on that South Cobb corridor near 285. Our baseball team, Smyrna Baseball, Smyrna Blue finished second in the state, being beaten out by North Columbus, but the other fellows won, and we're proud of our young baseball players. And then finally, this Friday, the Smyrna Sharks make another appearance in the state swimming championships, and I have 2 entrants in that, and I'm excited to go up to Cumming to see that they bring home some medals for Smyrna. It's a great athletic field of play for all of our kids in Smyrna, and thanks a lot for the support of Parks and Rec and all of our parents.
Did I hear you say that you were entered in 2 of those?
My 2 sons are both going to state. I didn't sign that.
Thank goodness. Anything else, Mr. Fennell? Thank you. Ms. Jones, anything else? No. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Graham. Heather, be thy name. We have no show cause hearing. We have 1 person signed up for citizens input. Alec Backery, 3459 Shawnee Trail. Comments?
My comments tonight is on some of the comments made by the council, certain people, in the article that was appeared in July 3rd's Marietta Journal on the Reed House. The first one was from Ward 3, comparing the Reed House to Bronner in size. It wasn't a fair comparison. What should have been compared was the Reed House to the community center. The community center does have a room of 130. They're proposing 130 for the Reed House. So that will be direct competition between the two. which I find outrageous, to compete again for the same facility, although the community center also holds 8 other rooms for events, as well as Bronner with 4. The Thomason Park, which is run by Cobb County in Mapleton, has been doing it for over 20 years for events and weddings. They hold 300 people. That's going to be competition being close to Smyrna. Now, the city administrator mentioned that she's hoping businesses might use our facility. When you go into business, you always want to have a solid base to at least break even on a venture. When I asked the city for what the rate sheet's going to be for the Reed House, they have not put that together right. This adventure, buying the Reed House for over $3 million of taxpayer money, we should have had a town hall meeting on this. That is what's, to me, is fair. Mayor, you mentioned that the council is committed to this project. Committed to what? It's the taxpayers' money, not the council's money. I don't quite understand that one. I also called the Historical Society and said, if some family lives in a house for 100 years, does that qualify any which way on being historical? They emphatically said no. You also mentioned, Mayor, that you considered the Reed House a gem. A gem of what? I have no idea. But we could use this money. I don't know where my time is. This is not working, so. This money could be used, or could have been used, for more important things in the city, like putting a new roof on the community center, since it has problems with leaking. And the getting involved in real estate here, when they develop to the right of the Reed House, is going to almost break up the whole view of that section of the street. But I just find that, again, the taxpayers are not getting a fair shake by not having a town hall meeting. We've had real estate situations before, and I've said it, you cannot speculate on taxpayer money. You've got to have a foundation. And to me, buying this house, you have no clue. And Bronner and the community center were not even used 50% of the time last year. So you have no clue on how you're going to get the $3 million plus back. And this is not what the city government should be involved in. That, again, is risking our money, and I don't think this council can get involved in these last couple years in real estate deals. Again, we've already been burnt on Hickory Lakes and Smyrna Commons, and there is no accountability and no open government when we have no open town hall meeting on this. $3 million plus will be interesting to see. It's a loss. Thank you.
If no business be brought forth this body, I declare this meeting adjourned at 9 o'clock.